Right, we're just going to look at a few other little parts then that you might need to do. All of these shapes are fine, but sometimes you haven't got shapes that are like that. You might have an unusual shaped button on the top. The buttons on the back, maybe where the screen are, maybe ever so slightly different. Okay, so if I just put in a quick screen like so, you'll also find, if you want to, if you right click, it comes up with the most sort of common used tools. So once you have had a bit of a play with this and you get a little bit quicker, you might find that the right click command might be useful to you. Okay, let's say we're going to put a button on here, and we might want to do I'm just going to make a shape up, and I'm going to make the shape up of different ways. You can either do it using a line tool, so I'm going to select here, and you can do lines in the normal kind of way, and you can select the angles and so on that you want to do. Okay, so you could produce a shape using lines, okay, and you can modify that and you can pull it out in the normal kind of way. The other way that you can do it is if you hold down your mouse, you can then come up with kind of curved lines as well, and arcs. So again, that's another way. It might be quite tricky to get it perfectly accurate doing that, but you can do it like so. And another way which might be more useful, depending on what you're drawing, is you can make it for a combination of a few different shapes. So I might want a rectangle and a circle. And it might want to be formed from those two shapes. Let's go for something like that. Once you've done your drawings, and I might do, I don't know, just make something up. Double click to finish. If I go to here, again, there's a range of different things that you can choose. Later on you can have an experiment with patterns. Often the buttons on the cameras tend to be positioned in sort of 45 or 90-degree pattern shape, so you could play around with that. We're going to look at the trim tool, and the trim tool works a bit like the scissors tool on 2D design, if you can remember that. And you can see it now starts to select little parts of the shape instead, and I can click them and trim them off. Okay, so it allows you to create shapes out of other shapes, and then you can trim lines off. Okay, and then same kind of way, you can stop it, you can press pull it, and then you've got your own kind of custom made shapes and things that you can do. So if parts on your camera aren't always geometric shapes, then you can produce your own using the trim tool. Again, always remember to save your work. Another thing that may potentially be useful is the offset tool. And the offset tool allows you to do a kind of a contour of the shape. Okay? You can see it contours that natural shape, and you can do that with other shapes and things as well. So it's a quick way to do kind of outlines, I suppose. If I want to press pull this, I can select now just the outside piece. Okay, for things like so. Depending on your camera, what it is that you're doing, that may or may not be useful. The final thing I want to show you is this at the bottom. So you may have noticed that as you've done your design, it will come up with lots of different symbols at the bottom. And this is like a history or a timeline of all the things that you've done. Okay? As you hover over it, it should highlight certain parts. So this bit here, as I highlight over this, it pops up highlighting that bottom button. And this is the extrusion. This will be the sketch of that extrusion. So if I right click the extrusion, I can go to edit feature, and I might decide that, oh, I've done that too big, it needs to be a smaller button, the extrusion needs to be a little bit smaller. Okay, and you can do that with any of these things, so you can edit any of them. So that button, for instance, I might right click it, edit that feature, and go, oh, you know what, that needed to be, whoops, try again, that needed to be a lot bigger, for instance. Okay, you need to make sure that you've got the arrow, and then you can pull the arrow out. There we go. Okay, I'll cancel that. The one before it is the shape. Okay, so if that is the extrusion, the one before it is the sketch, the shape that you did. So I'm going to choose which one. Let's choose that bottom one again. That sketch, I'm going to right click it and do edit sketch. It's now selected blue, and I can make changes and things to it that I need to. So I could draw another thing over the top, I could have a look at changing the dimension of it. When I'm happy, make the change and do it. So let's show you an example with the, see if I can find the button on the top of my camera. Okay, so we'll have a go at looking at this one. So I go down my order to see if I can find it. That's my lens, that's my button there. So I'm going to right click this one and do edit sketch. Okay, so it's now going to this, and I can change things like the dimension of that. I decided, oh, I've measured that wrong, it wasn't 25, it was actually 40, for instance. Okay, stop sketch, and it updates it. You need to be a little bit careful though. Can you see what's happened there? My button is now sticking over the top of my camera. So you need to make sure that if things like that do happen, that it doesn't affect anything later on. Okay? If it does, and again, I can right click it, I can edit that sketch, and I can move it along to make sure that it still fits inside of my camera.